Some of these companies collect as much as 45 or 50 habits, daily habits. Who are you calling most frequently? What time do you call them? Are you, when do you leave your house for work? What do you do on the weekend? If a criminal is listening in to your message, it only takes 3 seconds to be able to duplicate that voice.
Wow.
And use it against you. Don't put your life on your cell phone.
That's going to be a tough one for most people.
The dawn of a new technology, and we do not have the capability right now to protect against it. What is the industry trying to do about that? And quite frankly, I see a lot of confusion.
In the studio today, we have my friend Tony Perez. Tony is a seasoned entrepreneur and futurist who has built a career around breakthrough innovations in technology, security, and product development. He's a former U.S. Army captain and Purple Heart recipient, and his military background instilled a really deep understanding of security best practices. He played a key role in scaling iMagic to 70 million in global video game shipments, and later founded Safety Syringes, securing 10 U.S. patents before selling the company to Becton Dickinson. Perez's interest in cybersecurity led him to develop NetLock, a patented user-friendly passwordless authentication technology designed to combat large-scale cyber threats and enhance online security. Say that 5 times fast. Welcome, Tony.
Thank you. Thank you. I really appreciate you inviting me in. So let's start out with the AI platforms and large language models. Back in January 2023, OpenAI was introduced in the last half of 2022, and I went to a conference up in Silicon Valley, and the first, the keynote speaker was a guy from the FBI, and the first words out of his mouth is that AI is accelerating cybercrime, and there's not much, they can't even think about how they're going to catch up to the impact of cybercrime at that level. That was January 23, and of course, things have blossomed and grown ever since that. But what I want to talk about is, what is the power of AI, and what other advantages does it give the cyber criminal? And I want to define cyber criminal as both nation states as well as professional cyber criminals,
right,
that run actual businesses with marketing, sales, customer support, etc. They are formal businesses. And because they are formal businesses, almost everybody on the internet today is you can make $1,000 a week, Those are a good portion of those imitations are from these cyber businesses. And what they're doing is they're laying off the liability to you. So if you do something illegal, somebody's going to be knocking on your door, not their door. Okay? So let's talk about, how AI and large language models have really enhanced their capabilities, and quite frankly, it makes it extremely difficult to fight them. And this is the theme behind this. The danger of AI is the power to access, manipulate, and control data through AI logarithms.
Mm-hmm.
And the danger is that non-human security barriers can be built into that AI algorithm to concentrate economic power in the owners of the platform. That's pretty serious.
Yeah.
And you know what? We are seeing that today. So let me give you a little bit bigger picture of that particular situation. There are 3 things in the hackers or cyber criminals toolkit today. The first one that we all know about is the internet itself. However, it's really a global internet because a lot of the professional hackers that are out there are actually hired by nation states.
Mm-hmm.
So nation states are attacking and nation states are defending And guess what? There's a ton of money in it. It's not going to curtail. There's a ton of money because they have to protect themselves as well as attack. So that means if you're working on a global internet, you can attack from any place in the world. And of course, we've seen that. That's why we fear the Russians and the Chinese and the Iranians, etc. And there are, I think probably 200,000 to 300,000 attackers from those groups and Americans just in the United States alone.
Wow.
Just in the United States alone.
That's a staggering number.
Yes. And because I'm in the security business and we try to do things to protect ourselves, we have collected data showing how many attacks we would get on a daily basis and where they're from. And when the Ukraine war started, for example, that really, it was, a catalyst for more attacks in the United States. And this is what people don't know. It's a global tool. The internet is a global tool for cyber criminals.
That geopolitical situation is really amplifying cybersecurity concerns. And it doesn't really matter what type of business you are, what type of user you are. We could all be victim to some sort of cybersecurity attack, which is why it's important to be so vigilant. And we're talking about this topic today.
Well, I'm glad you used the word geopolitical, because I want people to understand what are these tools. Well, the next tool that everybody is using in that world are Bitcoin and cryptocurrencies, because they can now hide their revenue in foreign locations, and we cannot tap into that revenue or even measure it, quite frankly. There's the old statement from Watergate, follow the money. How do you follow the money if it's in a cryptocurrency?
Yeah,
very big problem. So they have access to everybody from any location, and they're hidden. And now they're able to hide their money. And now here comes along AI and large language models. Well, what does that provide? Well, the interesting thing about ChatGPT is, for people that were educated and trained, they could see an email coming in, see something wrong with the English or the logos, and say, okay, this is a bad email, and I need to just junk it and erase it. With ChatGPT, all the logos, all the grammar, everything is proper now. So it's almost impossible for the average user to really determine what is a good email and what is not a good email.
Yeah.
That's why business email compromise has grown so dramatically.
Yeah, the spoofing and the phishing and whatever all the other terms are basically out of control at this point, it feels like.
And what we recommend, and I would recommend it to your audience, if you don't know the source of that email, just erase it. I probably delete close to 500 emails a day, and I would say about 80% of them are automatic now because I rejected them so many times. The other problem is, it's hard to say, oh, okay, I don't want you to send me any more emails, because as soon as you hit that button to unsubscribe, they got 5 other or 10 others, email addresses that'll be sending you an email in their place. So the best thing you can do is just delete. That's a very practical way of going, and save your time. Don't read them. If you don't recognize, don't read them, especially if something comes from your bank, unless you're dealing with your bank. Currently, the bottom line is don't open anything that would jeopardize your financial information.
Yeah.
And emails is the best way they do that.
Ultra discerning. I mean, there's a point where, here at Auto Care Association, it's like a running joke, but we'll get texts from our CEO asking to buy Target gift cards. And,
yes.
We're all educated on that now, thankfully, thanks to our IT team. But, in the beginning, we were like, oh, yeah, let me go run down the street and go get this done. And now it's like, all right, if Bill asks for Target cards, it's not real. And it's just crazy the amount, the extent that these criminals will go to try to trap you into their system to get that information. So the simplest of things.
That's a great comment, because It's such a simple thing that you guys now realize that, but the word hasn't really gotten out. And hopefully, with this podcast, some of your people will pick up even your advice from your IT department, because they're right on. The fact is that the internet is an open source to everybody. And with all the major hacks that have been documented, I believe that almost everybody's personal information, a social security number, et cetera, all those things are already on the dark web.
Yeah.
And all they have to do is pay for them. You want a credit card to use for the next hour and grab something? $5. And you got a credit card, go charge $1,000 or whatever. And if they, if the outfit that you're buying from is not sensitive to that and doesn't have a good system, they rip people off every hour.
Oh my
on
gosh.
the hour, and then just burn the card.
Wow. And now, transfer that to the scale of a business.
Yes.
Now you've got a real problem. I could turn off my bank card. I may lose some money if I did it on a debit card versus a credit card, all those consumer protection things. But for a business, that could be absolutely detrimental.
Oh, absolutely. And it's happening every day. And the other part about AI, because see, here's the problem. We all grew up in a physical world, right? We understand the car. We love it. We make emotional decisions on the car that we want to buy if we have the money, which is getting harder, by the way. It's probably your first major purchase as a young person is getting that car you always desired.
Mm-hmm.
I remember I worked for about 7-8 months to save enough money to buy my first Volkswagen, which cost me $900.
Wow. Those were the days.
Those were the days. I mean, I used to make these Mad Mammoth ski runs, and it would cost me, I think, $4.50 for gasoline for the entire trip.
Amazing.
Yeah, that dates me,
Oh, man.
But yeah, it was fun. You mean mobility, personal mobility is freedom. It's joyful. Yeah. If you're going to business in LA, you can get stuck in the traffic. But on the weekends, when you're buzzing out to the beach or buzzing up to the mountains or going down up to the wine country to enjoy the day and stuff like that, having your own car or maybe even a convertible with the top down and letting the breeze just go through your hair, nothing can be better.
Couldn't agree more. That's why we work here at Auto Care Association. We want to protect that freedom, allow
Absolutely.
for you to purchase the vehicle that you choose that's right for you, service it where it's affordable and convenient to you, not be forced into other options, and, maybe buy a vehicle that you actually own and that isn't spying on you or doing something nefarious or having to worry about, a cybersecurity risk in that too. So there's a lot to consider buying a vehicle
you're absolutely
nowadays.
right. You're absolutely right. And I hope your audience is listening to you, quite frankly, because that privacy, that sense of freedom is being attacked.
Absolutely.
And we got to protect ourselves the best we can. So that actually brings me to the third thing, because the other thing about AI, it's part of the digital world. And the digital world is really invisible. That's why people don't understand it. Cyberspace is invisible. These things just happen. And so, and it's getting worse in terms of identity because, basically companies are in a very difficult situation. They need to protect people's information.
Right.
But at the same time, they need to verify that the information is actually accurate when that person is in the invisible space of the internet, right?
Right.
So the thing that is developing now because of AI is even more difficult or more pervasive is digital IDs.
Uh-huh.
And the digital IDs are going to collect what they call behavioral biometrics. Now, a biometric is like facial recognition, like your fingerprints and things like that most people have heard and are probably using on their phone or computer, etc.
Mm-hmm.
What's happening, though, to make it more effective in identifying a person, they're studying your behavior. And many of these companies are, not only asking permission to track you, but they're asking a lot of other questions when things come up. And some of these companies collect as much as 45 or 50 habits, daily habits that you're doing. Who are you calling most frequently? What time do you call them? Are you, when do you leave your house for work? What do you do on the weekend? Every single one of these is used. Well, if these are that person's habit, and then they're calling in to do something where the company is using our product, and we see an abnormality, something abnormal, then we don't want that call to go through, or we want to put up some barrier to make sure it is that person.
Interesting.
Absolutely a great thing to do.
Is voice verification one of those behavioral biometrics? Like, I think back to, this is so funny. You remember the movie, was it the Macaulay Culkin movie, Richie Rich, and the parents have to sing into the speaker to open Mount Rushmore, and it's like, voices match. But then I call my credit card company the other day, and they say, you can enroll in voice verification, and instead of a password, we'll just identify your voice. And I think, hey, that's really cool, but it kind of freaks me out because now there are AI tools that will listen to you, and then they'll create a whole script, and it sounds like it's just from you. And they could play that. And like, can a company detect against something like that, right? Like, all these tools are starting to mitigate some of those things. And it's getting a little freaky, to be honest, Tony.
Well, no, you should be concerned about that. I'm dealing with a business person that's, that's been helping us with our particular program. And both he and I have studied the brain and how it works and things like that for a number of reasons. And, one of the things that we protect against is these type of biometrics. So anyway, the problem with voice is if a criminal is listening in to your message, it only takes 3 seconds to be able to duplicate that voice.
Wow.
And use it against you. So I would advise your people, do not use voice. It's too easy to compromise.
Wow.
It's 3 seconds. I couldn't believe it.
That's mind-blowing, honestly. And probably the rate at how quickly that technology came out, and then how quickly a criminal was able to kind of crack and break that technology is even scarier. Like, there's a lot to keep up with.
Oh, yeah. Well, everybody's heard of deep fake, right?
Real.
Okay. And, where they're using, Obama's face and his words and stuff like that. Well, if you can make the voice consistent with what you're seeing on the screen, it looks real. And it's the best way, in many cases, to spread misinformation.
Yeah.
So there's all kinds of aspects of using these tools on, like every technology. Things can be used for the good or things can be used for the bad. Right now, these tools like AI are giving cyber criminals a greater edge. And quite frankly, it's extremely difficult for your IT people or your security people to protect against it, because it's like being in a building and there's 1,000 windows somebody can come into.
And you mentioned that you went to that conference. It's like one of the inaugural conferences about AI, and you've got someone from the FBI there already. Now, clearly, you, through what you do at NetLock, and I want to talk about that a little bit too, you're very aware of the risks and the growing risks that AI kind of brings to the table when it comes to cybersecurity. And we're seeing that increase kind of at an exponential rate. As with any technology comes about, everything changes really rapidly. How are you feeling about, the amount of cybercrime that's happening that AI is contributing to, and lawmakers, regulations, we hear whispers about, hey, we need to regulate this. We need to make sure that we're keeping people safe. Is there progress being made in that realm kind of from your research, or do you feel like more needs to be done?
Well, we're at the dawn of a new technology, and we do not have the capability right now to protect against it. All you have to do is be able to, there is a lot of effort. In fact, the AI uh, area, it's predicted to be worth $30 trillion in the next 5 years.
Trillion with a T.
Trillion with a T. We're way beyond. I mean, I remember if you knew a millionaire, wow, that's really great. Now it's, they're over 3,000 billionaires, and trillionaires are the next step, and that is going to be because of AI. Okay, so you're asking the right question. What is the industry trying to do about that? And quite frankly, I see a lot of confusion.
Yeah.
Okay. And you can't depend on our legislators to necessarily properly regulate this. And this is why, I consider, Elon Musk the second largest threat that we have out there, because he's unregulated and he's breaking into everybody's personal information. Why is he doing that? Because he's feeding his own AI algorithm with all your personal information. That means all his business competitors. He's in the automobile industry. He has huge government contracts, which is taxpayer money. It's supposed to be used for the good of the taxpayer of the nation. And he's using it to get a competitive edge over the competition. Not fair. And you don't see the government or doing anything about it. And the fact is, in that regard, like many people, when you mention AI to people, they don't get it. It's beyond their ability. When I was younger, I was in the video game business. I had worked for Mattel in a company called Magic, and the legislature was considering trying to regulate video games because of the war scenes and
Violence,
all
yeah.
the negatives about that. And so I actually was a witness in that regard for the industry. Went to Washington D.C. and had a great time while I was there. But it was interesting how uninformed our legislators are. The fact of the matter is that they do have somebody on their staff that knows what's going on and understands the technology. They're helpless. They're only going to listen to the lobbyists on what to do next.
That's the danger, because I think for most people, AI is, I heard about ChatGPT. It'll help, make an itinerary for my vacation or help me write a paper for school or for work. And now, these image generators that people are using on social media, like the fun things, right? But I was looking at a conference and they had said there's something like 80,000 AI tools out there today and growing. That number is probably double that at this point by now, because these tools are creating other AI tools, right? At this,
exactly,
again, exponential rate. Like, it used to take a long time to create these things, and now it's happening like that. So, something that you said with me in the beginning really stuck, and it was that sometimes these cyber crimes or criminals, it's a business. It's not, you often think there's one bad actor and it's a person in a dark room doing something on a computer to try to get your business's information, but there are whole businesses built around this cyber crime in order to create all of this chaos for people, and in the end to make money, right? Because cybercrime is about money mostly, right? Like they're trying to
that's. I mean, I don't know if you saw the movie Bruce Willis, Live Free or Die Hard.
Yeah.
Did you see that?
Of course.
Yeah. And it was fun and a fun movie. But, realistically, this is why I love movies and entertainment, because in a lot of respects, they are showing us where the world is headed.
Mm-hmm.
And, the key to that movie was, in the end, it was about the money, stealing the money, right? But at a scale that no criminal ever thought before.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, these are crazy theories, and conspiracy theories in some respects, but we're starting to see things happen along those lines.
Right.
So the world is very gray when it comes to cybersecurity and what its impact will be. And tools like AI just make the situation worse.
Yeah, absolutely. We've gone through all these different, like I think they're called like attack surfaces, right? Like there's all these vulnerable areas where someone could obtain information about us and then use that information, for nefarious purposes, mainly to gain money. So we talked about like email being one of them, your phone, anything you post on social media, all these social platforms. We touched on the car and not just Tesla, right? Like,
Yeah.
we like to,
Yeah.
Tesla is a prime example, but a lot of the cars today have so much technology in them and they are collecting terabytes of data from the driver.
Yeah.
That's something that we talked about quite a lot at Auto Care Association. There's some privacy issues when it comes to being in the car and what it's collecting about you, who it's being transmitted to, and then who it's being sold to, because it's very public information that
Who's
your data
being
is being
sold to?
exactly. It is being collected and it is being sold. That's a fact. That's not a conspiracy. Anybody can Google that right now.
Exactly. And that's why every time you go on the internet to try a new app, et cetera, it's asking you all all your information, right?
Hmm.
So that once again, it's about collecting data and information on people and all their daily habits. So let me give you some simple examples of how the automobile. You guys you're obviously your show has educated people a lot in the data collection that an automobile does, et cetera. But I remember just before I went into cybersecurity, I'm a graduate of USC, and that's where I got a lot of my background on looking at future trends, because I look at future trends and say, okay, what's the problem here? What's the problem here? And what can I do to solve that problem with
Hmm.
today's technology? But anyway, so you would go to a football game. It's crowded. There's always going to be people that leave their keys in their car. So they just walk through the parking lots, find one, open it up, turn on the car, and hit the navigation or map on the computer in that car, and it takes them directly, gives them the directions to go to their house, and opens up the garage door, which allows them to get into the house and steal anything they want. It got so bad at the USC games at that time, they announced, please make sure that you have your car keys because this
Wow.
is the problem. Okay. When you think about that, was just a real practical, to a large extent, not that unsophisticated situation, but with the data that is now collected in the car, because you interface with the car with your cell phone. That means it has
Hmm.
your complete database of connections. Who are your friends? Where do they live? Who do you call? All your personal information that's in that cell phone is now captured inside your car.
Right.
And it can be used against you, and it can be used against your friends.
That's
Very
right.
serious. And one of the things that I have learned is don't put your life on your cell phone.
That's going to be a tough one for most people,
Exactly.
right? The
Yeah.
convenience of having this thing have everything that you need is worth more than the risk that people take, and that can be a tough pill to swallow sometimes.
Yeah. Well, I think you just mentioned a word that's really, really important, and that's the word risk. Okay. We are looking at the cybersecurity problem, businesses, personally, et cetera, from the risk. And a lot of people say, God, I'm such a small person and I don't own much. And my risk is low. So I can afford to put all this stuff on there because it's really convenient. That's the wrong way to look at it. I mean, think about it. Do you have risks every time you drive your car that you might be in a car accident? Of course you do. Even if it's low, you have that risk. The problem is not the risk. The problem is the disruption to your life if you're in a car accident. If you're in a car accident, you have to, it has to be police. You got to notify your insurance. The other person may have road rage. You might get in a fist fight. Look at all the disruption that can happen because of an incident. Risk is the wrong way to look at this. if I do something wrong in this area, this could disrupt my life, not only for a day or an hour, but for years.
Mm-hmm.
And that is how you should measure that. And that includes using these devices with your children, if you have children. So one of the great things that, several uh, states are imposing now is that kids can't bring their cell phones in their classrooms.
There you go.
You got to train them at that level.
That's all right.
And so, and because in the car, it's picking up all the radio signals. That means all your passengers, etc. That data is being compromised as well. So all their lives will be disrupted if something goes wrong when you're in your automobile.
Yeah.
So it's disruption to your personal life. It's a disruption to your business as well. And that's really what people ought to look at when they're looking at cybersecurity and trying to protect themselves better.
Yeah. And I like, thinking about it, not short term, but long term. That really translates to business as well, right?
Oh, yeah.
If a hacker gets a hold of your information, wipes your systems, and holds all of it for ransom, that's not something that you're going to resolve in an hour, through a visit to the doctor's office. They slap a Band-Aid on it and say you're okay. That's like days, weeks, months of remediation. And even at that point, you might not be able to get everything back operationally to where it should be. So that risk could be a years long issue if you haven't prepared properly.
And so if you look at the disruption of having a cyber attack on your business, then you can say, okay, that's the thing that I'm trying to protect. What kind of tactics can I use to protect myself against that? And you can't, you can go to an expert and they'll tell you can do this, this, and this, and this, and this. The problem is you have to take it one step at a time because you can't afford to try to solve the entire problem.
Right.
But the interesting thing is it's really a people's problem. And you have to invest in educating your people, your family members that use devices, and establish some security habits that's going to minimize the disruption if something goes wrong. Let me give you an example. There are about, let's say 1.5 million cell phones lost every year in the United States. And a good 7% of those are actually stolen by somebody. Okay, so there's a term, I hate to use terms, but there's a cybersecurity attack term called spear phishing. Instead of general phishing, where they throw out a big net of emails to everybody, they're targeting this specific person. Okay, so that's why if they have access to all their daily routines because of these AI digital identity situations, then they can pick the moment that person is at their weakest, steal their phone, break into their phone, and all havoc starts loose because they got their credit card information, etc. It's disastrous. That's a disruption, like you said, may take them a year to resolve, but also draws in their family. Why are they attacking that one family member? Well, that one family member, if they're very well off or has a very important information, it's going to affect their, the businesses that they're associated with.
Right.
And everybody else.
Right.
So, education and get what you guys are doing. You're a public service, and that's why I look forward to talking to you. You're doing such a good thing. I really want to thank you for giving me this opportunity. But thank you. I'm sure your audience will thank you too for all the things that you're teaching on.
I mean, we appreciate you because obviously you're a really well-seasoned expert in this. This is why we wanted to have you on the show. I mean, you said something so pertinent, but it's the human firewall, right? Like those weaknesses happen with the people. And consider, most of us have our work email on our personal cell phone. So if we get phished or spear phished, that compromises not just us, but our companies, right? Same thing with our laptops, right? Like You would be lying if you said that you didn't do a little personal work on your work laptop just because it was convenient and because you had it open, it was ready, and it was right there.
Right.
Also opens you up to vulnerabilities. So there's all these little simple, like tactical things that, companies need to educate themselves on in order to reduce some of those vulnerabilities, because the personal and the business have really merged. There's a lot of overlap now. For a lot of people, there's not that distinction. And to me, like that feels like one of the biggest cybersecurity risks to both, your personal life and your business life.
Yes, you're absolutely right. And just to reemphasize that with what I just said a few minutes ago, if professional criminals are collecting all that data to put it on an AI platform, if you have all that data on your cell phone and then they have your tax records, what on your tax records is going to show what businesses that you're involved with.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, because you may be taking business deductions on your taxes, and all those records will come out. So the amount of private and personal information that AI is going to have and can manipulate, put incredible power on the people that are running that. And here's where it's really bad. Only 2% of the entire population in the U.S. is part of AI. So
What do you
you're
mean?
talking about being controlled by a very small group of people.
Ooh, that's creepy. So, I mean, again, comparing things to stuff we've seen on popular TV and movies, it just feels like an episode of Black Mirror on Netflix, which I can't even watch because it is so dystopian, and it really illustrates, the downsides of some of this technology and how you have to be so careful. So we've talked about, like some common mistakes. We've talked about some attack surfaces. We've talked about, what are some of the biggest threats? AI is a big part of the conversation. It's really amplifying cybersecurity risks. But I want to talk about some practical advice for people and for companies, especially companies, to protect themselves against some of these risks, right? I think there's really simple things that we've already talked about, but on a larger scale, on a business scale, what can and should companies be doing to protect themselves?
I think the first thing is that, for the owner of a business or the executive team to really look at what kind of disruption would happen to their business if there was a successful attack, and what are the most important parts of those business that they would have to have a plan that responds to the situation.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and that's where that's a group think thing, because what I have found in businesses, usually a business starts because a person has an expertise in a certain area. And when it comes to budgeting and getting things done, that department always gets the resources that they need.
Right.
They don't really share it with other things. So if you have an engineering company, engineering budgets are usually going to get, approved. But, somebody over in manufacturing or somebody over in customer service, they may or may not. So you have to look, the business team has to look, okay, if there was a disruption, what would cause us the most pain?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And then that's where they would want to start. What are those areas? Can we prioritize that list? And then how can we pick off each one of those? Okay. So they would build a plan for disruption. And most companies don't have that.
Right.
Because it forces them to make decisions like, okay, who's going to be in charge? Is it the CEO who has been a great sales guy or a great marketeer, but knows zero about technology? He just knows that he needs people to do that. Is it somebody in the technology department because they will know all the systems and what needs to be protected? Is it somebody from legal? Is it somebody that's the CEO because of all the customers? So the fact is there are multiple roles in a company, and you have to decide, okay, how are we going to work together to cover all these areas? What is going to be your responsibility? And can you put one person in charge to make sure it's coordinated, not only at that level, but at the employee level? We kind of got started, when I started Photolock, it was really, or NetLock, it was just going to be a part-time thing to make a couple extra bucks. Okay. But when Sony hit, and that organization was frozen, and they lost a lot of money when they were hit by by the North Koreans. That changed the industry.
Yeah.
Okay. And we have only seen those type of attacks. See, here's why it's not, everybody's going to have to look at the budget of this and why it's so sensitive, and they're going to have to learn how to spend their money wisely. Think about it. Big companies spend hundreds of millions of dollars every year in cybersecurity, and they still get broken into.
Right.
So what is a small company or medium-sized company that doesn't have that kind of budget? What can they do? That's the value of you asking that question. It's a great question, and there are things. But first, you have to understand what your problem is and where you're going to get hurt the most, and decide how you're going to put human resources behind that, which will also, require that team to look at their employees and educating them on their role. That's really an investment. But they've already made the investment. They hired these people and they're paying for it. All they have to do is put some materials together, let everybody know, if this happens, we may shut down customer support, or we may tell customer support. Legal will say, this is what you're going to say to customers if they start calling in. There are inexpensive ways to help you get out of the problem or to minimize the damage. And those are under control of each little company. And that's before you spend a lot of money with other people. Okay. So it's a people problem. And until people really become concerned about their security and see the bigger picture of how their economic life can be disrupted, completely go into chaos if they don't help contribute to the solution, that's where, we end up hurting ourselves. We're doing it to ourselves.
Yeah.
And so, understand the problem. Make sure that you educate first. And then if you have been able to prioritize where is the biggest damage, then spend your money in those areas and try to get the right advice and the right tools.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Because once you start that, everybody in the world is going to try to sell you something. Okay. And one of the biggest problems that we have in cybersecurity today is the overlap of the same services that we're paying 2 or 3 times to get. That is financial killer. And I'm telling you, a small business, a medium-sized business cannot afford to buy every tool that's out there because it sounds good.
Right.
There's a lot of judgment. It comes down to good judgment, understanding, what you're trying to protect. It's just a real human response to a problem. Don't look at it as a technical problem. It's a human problem.
That's a great quote. Cybersecurity isn't a technical problem. It's a human problem.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah. I think that's the quote of the episode. I really do appreciate that perspective, because we talk so much about technology, but each time we step back and it goes back to, well, who is implementing the technology? Who is the bad actor or actors, the organization that is the bad, right? It always comes back to a human that's doing it. So I think one that's super important to remember as people are trying to dissect what's happening and how to protect their business. And then also remember that the human firewall is also a very important part of that, because educating yourself, educating your family, your friends, and your business, like there's parallels that can be drawn to, one of your good friends gets their, credit card stolen and, a $10,000 bill. Okay, now we equate that to how that happens to your business and how you would need to mitigate that. Well, is the best mitigation preparation? Probably. Does it mean we're going to be able to avoid every and all risks? Probably not. But I think that's a really important, point to make when you're trying to wrap your brain around this massive conversation around how to keep, businesses, small, medium, and large, safe in this new era, as you mentioned it was earlier.
Oh yeah, and quite frankly, I think that your people would appreciate you trying to describe the impact and give them that picture that, like every job in a business, it's important. Okay, this is an activity that every person participates in because we're actually in the digital world when we're on the internet conducting business.
Right.
And it spreads to your own personal lives. And, we're, with this stuff, I was looking at Uber and Lyft and stuff like that. And when last time I was up in San Francisco with my daughter, we had Waymo, one of those driverless cars, and it was really cool because they had all these cameras. And then when I did the research for this, I realized, I said, I want to look at what's the vulnerability if you're inside one of those vehicles.
Oh my gosh.
It's incredible.
Ugh.
It's a spy on wheels. And if they make you comfortable and feeling good and you get where you want, your guard comes down.
Yeah.
Your guard comes down. But they're watching, they have multiple cameras because they want to protect themselves that if you do something illegal or make a claim that's not realistic, they have it on tape and they can defend themselves. So we're really at a crossroads where the social contract between, our suppliers and et cetera and ourselves who use those services, that's really a disruptive place right now. And it really requires trust.
Mm-hmm.
We have to trust that the people that are providing these services are doing it in a way that we feel that they're putting us first. Everybody says put the customer first.
Right.
Okay. Security in protecting their data and their private information is part of putting the customer first.
Absolutely. Could not agree more.
Yeah.
Tony, that's some really interesting food for thought. Do you have I want to get your final thoughts on, anything else that you would like to share, like as a security expert with the auto care industry, or just anyone in general, right? Like things to consider.
Well, I think that what has happened in our world, we have moved from a time that we could actually leave our front doors open. We trusted our neighbors. We felt that our neighbors are part of the community. I remember as kids, and there were several blocks that we're all located in, but we would have lunch with one mom that would cook lunch for everybody. We'd be out there playing baseball. We'd be, hiding a seat at night, and nobody would ever be worried about it because we trusted the community to watch out there. And if kids got in trouble, people stepped up. We need to get back to that type of community. Now, I know that the idea of communities are very popular on the digital space, but I don't think it's with that value of protecting everybody.
Yeah.
And I would like to see us come back that the community, I want to be in this community because they care about me just as much is I can care about everybody else in the community, and everybody can add their little piece. It doesn't have to be dramatic, but when you get in an elevator, for example, you don't stay around and stuff like that. I mean, we're closing our world when we should be opening it up
Mm-hmm.
and inviting people in. And, even though they may be different from us. So that's, I would like to see the community grow where we are concerned about each other as opposed to what can I get from this other person?
I appreciate that. And a positive message in a world where we've gone so much more digital, so much more virtual, and it seems like trust everywhere is kind of broken, sadly, because of all of these things happening in cybersecurity and, the geopolitics, what's going on in the world right now. But a really, really fascinating conversation today, Tony. Thank you so much for joining us.
Oh, I appreciate it. Thank you very much. It was, like I said, this has been fun. And this doesn't have to be, this conversation doesn't have to be harsh. It's about us. It's about human beings. And we can have fun at it and do the right thing.
Perfect.